nasal septum, maxillary sinus, inferior nasal concha, lateral petrogloid muscle, master muscle, temporalis muscle, ramus mandible, nasopharynx, occipital condyle, parotid gland, vertebral artery, spinal cord, pinna, foramen magnum, mastoid air cell. Nasal septum, maxillary sinus, middle nasal concha, master muscle, temporalis muscle, ramus mandible, lateral petrogloid muscle, vertebral artery, spinal cord, pinna, cerebellar tonsil, cerebellar hemisphere, mastoid air cell. Nasal septum, maxillary sinus, mandible nasal concha, temporalis muscle, ramus mandible, medulla oblongata, cerebellar tonsil, cerebellar hemisphere, cisterna magna, mastoid air cell, bacillary artery, lateral petrogloid muscle, nasolacrimal duct, maxillary sinus, nasal septum, middle nasal concha, temporalis muscle, head of mandible, bacillary artery, internal jugular vein, medulla oblongata, fourth ventricle, cerebellar tonsil, cerebellar hemisphere, cisterna magna, inferior cerebellar vermis, flux cerebelli, nasolacrimal duct, middle nasal concha, maxillary sinus, nasal septum, internal carotid artery, temporalis muscle, temporomandibular joint, glossopharyngeal nerve, bacillary artery, medulla oblongata, inferior cerebellar vermis, cisterna magna, fourth ventricle, cerebellar hemisphere, flux cerebelli, nasolacrimal duct, nasal septum, middle nasal concha, maxillary sinus, sphenoid sinus, temporalis muscle, temporal lobe, internal carotid artery, bacillary artery, pons, cochlea, facial nerve, vestibulocochlear nerve, fourth ventricle, cerebellar hemisphere, flux cerebelli, axillary artery, internal acoustic matters, cerebropontine angle CPA, inferior cerebellar vermis, choroid flex, nasal septum, sphenoid sinus, temporal lobe, internal carotid artery, maxillary artery, internal acoustic matters, cerebropontine angle CPA, flux cerebelli, temporalis muscle, pons, semicircular canal, fourth ventricle, cerebellar hemisphere, nasal septum, inferior rectus muscle, sphenoid sinus, temporal lobes, internal carotid artery, maxillary artery, flux cerebelli, ethmoid sinus, temporalis muscle, pons, trigeminal nerve, fourth ventricle, cerebellar hemisphere, frontal sinus, coracoid nucleus head, third ventricle, white matter, pineal gland, flux cerebelli, superior sagittal sinus, gray matter, anterior cerebral arteries, putamen, thalamus, choroid flex, occipital horn of lateral ventricle, superior vermin vein, straight sinus, frontal sinus, gene of corpus callosum, created nucleus body, white matter, flux cerebelli, superior sagittal sinus, gray matter, frontal horn of lateral ventricle, septum pellucidum, coracoid flex, choroid flex, splenium of corpus callosum, occipital horn of lateral ventricle, splenium of corpus callosum, body of corpus callosum, white matter, flux cerebelli, superior central sinus, gray matter, body of lateral ventricle, white matter, flux cerebri, superior central sinus, gray matter, white matter, gray matter, flux cerebri, superior central sinus.